inside Syria's worst prison, the human slaughterhouse. In the heart of war-torn Syria, beneath the crumbled concrete and propaganda billboards of a crumbling regime, lay a facility so horrifying it was whispered about more than it was known. It had no official name. To some, it was simply Branch 215. But to those who survived it, or heard the screams echoing from its depths, it became known as the human slaughterhouse. In 2017, a 22-year-old journalism student named Tariq al-Hamza disappeared in the middle of the night in Damascus. His only crime? Posting a tweet criticizing the president's latest speech. He was dragged from his family's apartment by masked intelligence officers, thrown into a van, and blindfolded. That night, his life ended, and a new nightmare began. Tariq arrived at the facility after hours of driving, beaten every time he asked for water. His blindfold was never removed. When the van door opened, a voice growled, "Welcome to the place where traitors disappear." His first memory of the place wasn't the stench of rot or the screams. It was the silence. An eerie, unnatural silence that filled the air like poison. No birds, no footsteps, just fear. The guards called it Syria, a top-secret military prison located about 30 kilometers north of Damascus. But even among the worst Syrian dungeons, Syria had a darker twin. The underground slaughterhouse, a hidden wing where prisoners were not reformed, but processed like cattle. Tariq's clothes were stripped. He stood naked in a room with 30 others, all blindfolded, hands bound behind their backs with electrical wire. His number was called number 10321. They beat him with a rubber hose for hours, demanding he confess to crimes he never committed: terrorism, spying, insulting the leader. The torture didn't end until he confessed to all of it. They had what they needed, a reason to disappear him. He was dragged into what guards mockingly called the refrigerator, a 3 by 2 meter cell built for 4, but occupied by 16 men. The walls dripped from moisture and blood. Some inmates were dying, others were already dead. But none of that compared to what was below. The underground level was a killing factory, hidden from journalists, Red Cross inspections, and even lower-ranking guards. Tariq would only hear about it through whispers and one man, Abu Marwan, a former military officer turned prisoner. Marwan had once served the regime, until he refused to shoot a protesting child in Homs. For that, he was labeled a traitor and sent to the slaughterhouse. He told Tariq, "They don't shoot you here. Bullets are expensive. They hang you, starve you, electrocute you, or beat you until your spine snaps." There were execution rooms with hooks for hanging bodies upside down, drains to collect blood, and industrial ovens that some said were used to burn corpses late at night. Smoke rising from the prison like whispers of 1,000 ghosts. Tariq didn't want to believe it, until one day, the guards came for him. It was a routine transport, or so he thought. Tariq and 20 others were lined up, chained together. Marwan was beside him, whispering prayers. They descended past the known prison levels into a deeper, darker corridor. It smelled of rot, bleach, and burning plastic. Then they reached a black iron door. Guards opened it. What he saw would haunt him forever. Inside was a butcher's chamber. Metal hooks hung from the ceiling. Buckets of blood stained the walls. A man lay face down on a table, unrecognizable. Bones broken, flesh peeled. The guard looked over the prisoners. His hand pointed to 3 men. Tariq was one. "Take them to processing. The rest go to disposal." Processing meant torture for confessions. Disposal meant death. In the midst of his torture, his nails pulled, his ribs shattered, Tariq did something no one expected. He sang. He sang an old revolutionary song his father used to play. The guard paused, then laughed, then asked, "You can sing? Good. We need entertainment for the interrogators." For weeks, Tariq became the singing prisoner, kept him alive. But it also earned him a place closer to the guards, enough to learn how things worked inside. He learned that bodies were buried in mass graves near Katana, that emaciated prisoners were used as laborers to clean the cells after executions, that there were doctors working there not to heal, but to determine how long a body could survive electrocution before dying. And he learned something else. There was a way out. It wasn't a plan, it was a miracle. One night, a mortar struck near the prison's outer wall, caused chaos. Lights went out. 2 guards were killed. In the confusion, Marwan and Tariq slipped into a maintenance tunnel they discovered while cleaning blood drains. They crawled for 2 kilometers through filth and darkness until they reached a storm grate. Beyond it, freedom. They emerged near an abandoned olive grove. Villagers found them the next morning, half dead. A local smuggler took them to the Turkish border. From there, Tariq made it to Germany. Marwan never survived the trip. Infection killed him in Aleppo. Today, Tariq is a human rights activist. He works with international tribunals to expose Syria's secret prisons. He has testified before the UN, met with war crimes investigators, and helped publish satellite imagery that matches his descriptions of Saydnaya and the slaughterhouse. Still, the nightmares never end. He hears the screams in his sleep, remembers the smell of burning flesh, the look in Marwan's eyes the day he died, the sound of bodies falling from hooks, and the worst part is still happening. Despite reports by Amnesty International and defector testimonies, the world largely looks away. The Syrian regime still denies the slaughterhouse exists. No one has been prosecuted. No inspector has returned. But Tariq fights on. He knows he survived for a reason, to be the voice for those who were silenced in the dark. Sometimes, late at night, he stares out the window of his small Berlin apartment. Snow falls silently. He hums the old revolutionary song. Not for hope, not for peace, but for memory, so the dead aren't forgotten, so the slaughterhouse is never denied. So one day the truth can bring justice. It had been 4 years since Tariq al-Hamza escaped the nightmare of Saydnaya. Since then, his life had been a whirlwind of interviews, tribunals, human rights conferences, and quiet, private breakdowns. But one morning, he received a message that shook him to his core. "We're going in. We want you to help. We need proof." It came from Nora Givens, an award-winning investigative journalist from the UK. She had spent 2 years investigating Syrian war crimes and had managed to infiltrate the outskirts of regime territory. Alongside her was Basil Mansour, a former Syrian military engineer turned whistleblower. Their mission, to expose the slaughterhouse to the world. On camera, their problem. They needed a guide who knew the layout and had nothing left to lose. Tariq had promised himself never to return to Syria. The trauma still lived in his bones. But when Nora showed him satellite images and whispered of a mobile crematorium, recently installed behind Saydnaya's main facility, something inside him snapped. Justice, he realized, wouldn't come from words. It had to be dragged out of the shadows. So on a foggy April night, with forged documents and fake IDs, they crossed from Turkey into Syria through a smuggler's route near Afrin. The group included Denora, the bold reporter with a hidden GoPro sewn into her scarf; Basil, who once helped design the prison's electrical system; Abu Farid, a rebel fighter turned fixer who now guided journalists through war zones; and Tariq, the survivor returning to the belly of the beast. Saydnaya stood like a fortress on a hill, surrounded by silence. No birds, no children, just fog and rot. The group set up in an abandoned villa 5 kilometers away. From there, they launched drones, mapped guard rotations, and intercepted radio chatter. Nora's camera captured everything, the black smoke curling from hidden chimneys, the sound of distant screams at night, trucks arriving with blindfolded prisoners and leaving empty. Then one night Basil whispered, "There's an old maintenance shaft. It hasn't been used in years. It runs straight into the slaughterhouse's lower wing." It was their only chance. They waited until a sandstorm blew in, choking the skies and distracting the outer guards. Covered in dust, they reached the maintenance shaft. Tariq froze for a moment. The rusted bars, the acrid smell, the dripping condensation. It was exactly as he remembered. He trembled as he crawled through, Nora behind him, recording. The tunnel ended in a concrete chamber. And then, the door. Basil picked the lock with a trembling hand. The hinges groaned. They stepped inside. What they saw next would never leave them. It was real. Every rumor, every nightmare, it was real. Inside the underground wing were rows of metal tables, hanging chains, blood-stained hooks, and grates in the floor to drain human waste. The walls were etched with numbers and tallies, possibly of those killed. In one chamber they found a ledger written in code, but Basil recognized it. It was a kill list. "This isn't just a prison. This is a system," Nora whispered. "It's a factory." They documented everything. Videos, photos, sampled residues. Tarek even found his old prisoner number, #10321, carved into the wall. Next to it was another name, Marwan. They nearly wept. Then came the footsteps. The guards had changed shifts early. Voices barked in Arabic. Flashlights danced through the hall. The team hid in a corpse chamber, covering themselves with sheets used for transporting bodies. It worked, until a guard noticed a dropped flashlight battery. The alarm rang. They ran. Through tunnels, up stairwells. Nora tripped, breaking her hand. Tarek carried her. Abu Farid laid suppressive fire with a stolen pistol. Basil led the way to the exit. 2 guards were shot. Basil was hit in the leg, but they reached the surface. A rebel extraction team picked them up near Katana, just as regime forces closed in. Back in Turkey, the footage was sent to 4 news agencies, 2 human rights tribunals, and leaked to global social media platforms. The story exploded. The footage was undeniable. Blood, documents, corpses, crematorium blueprints. Western governments issued condemnations. The UN scheduled an emergency session. Interpol reopened war crimes cases. For the first time, Saidnea's horrors weren't just rumors. They were reality, but there was a cost. Abu Farid was captured a week later. His last message, "Tell the world it was worth it." Basil's leg was amputated. He now lives under witness protection in Spain. Nora won 2 international awards. She never returned to Syria. And Tarek? He speaks at universities now. Not as a victim, but as a witness. A warrior for memory. He founded an NGO that helps survivors of torture. He never stops talking about the human slaughterhouse, because he knows the regime wants people to forget. And forgetting, he says, is how the slaughterhouse survives. Even today, in 2025, Saidnea remains operational. Hidden, guarded, but the world now knows what lies beneath it. There are names on lists, bodies in mass graves, and ghosts who scream not just in nightmares, but in courtrooms, documentaries, and history books. Tarek believes that one day soon, there will be justice. And when that day comes, the ghosts will finally sleep. Berlin. A cold morning in February 2026. Tarek Al-Hamza sat alone in a cafe, watching frost gather on the windows. The last year had been quiet, deceptively so. Nora was writing a book. Basil had gone completely off the grid. Abu Farid's fate remained unknown. No body, no grave. Then came the knock on the door. 2 men in suits. European Union investigators. They handed him a letter. "You are hereby summoned to testify at The Hague as a primary witness in the trial of Major General Fawaz Ghaddanfar, commander of Saidnea prison." Tarek stared at the paper. His mouth was dry. This was it. The day survivors had prayed for. The day the slaughterhouse was dragged into the light. The defense was brutal. Ghaddanfar's lawyers called the footage fabricated. The kill lists, enemy propaganda. They even tried to claim Tarek was a radical, that Nora's team was working for foreign intelligence. But the prosecution had the footage, the satellite data, the burnt uniforms, the ledger, and Tarek. For 3 weeks he was coached, protected, guarded by Dutch security. He was even given a new alias, Khalid Hassan, for his safety. But Tarek refused to hide his name when he entered the courtroom. "Let him know who I am," he said. "I'm not afraid of ghosts anymore." The trial was televised. Millions watched around the world. Tarek walked into the chamber wearing a simple black suit. His hands shook slightly as he placed them on the Quran and took the oath. Then he spoke. He described the screams, the hooks, the blood. He named names, showed scars. He pointed at Gadenfar. That man turned a prison into a slaughterhouse. He is not a commander. He is not a patriot. He is a butcher. The room fell silent. The prosecutor showed the drone footage of burning bodies. Do you recognize this place, Mr. Al-Hamza? Yes, Tariq whispered. I smelled it in my sleep for years.